Thanks for clicking on the video. Like, subscribe, and share if you find this useful or interesting. So in the last video where we were working on the model, the last working session, we got to here. And if I collapse all this new stuff, you will see that we have basically almost completely filled the model, the document tree with new stuff. So we need to clean up all this stuff so that even though it was hard to make, at least it will be easy to use in the future. So right now, I want to show you what that will look like. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just going to give you a preview of what you have once you've done this. So now everything has been fit into the previously existing folders, but each time we take one of these new folders, we need to think carefully about where to put it. And now we have everything put together here. And I want to show you something actually kind of fun. If I go all the way back in my blending setup, and if you remember all the way back at the beginning, we had these blend preview curves. And when you join them with the metals, you would get these previews. And I said it was kind of difficult to see what they related to because they weren't touching the surface. And now that we have our final surfaces, we can see what they are really for and how useful they can be early on. They still predict really well what the blends are going to do in the middle. If I look at it from the top, these two curves, for example, give me a really good idea of what's happening in this transition. But I can actually make it a lot more meaningful than that. Because if you remember, I said these blends, this curve here represents what you would get if you weren't blending in this direction here. And this curve here represents what you would get if you weren't blending in this direction. So let me do that real quick. I'm going to hide my metals just so I can easily get to this point right here. And instead of 0.75, I'm going to make it 0.95. It shoots all the way up to the top. And now my top curve, my top layout looks like it's not even blended at all. There's just a tiny little residual fillet left here. I don't see it's done some really distorted stuff with my rounding corner because it doesn't really make sense to do it in this direction. But the model still did it. And now when I look at it from the top view and I look back at my preview blends, they are very, very close to what I actually get. So I still think that every single thing that was done to organize things here is really important and very useful in specific cases. And so it's worth having it all well organized. And so let's do more. Let me show you just a little bit more about this. So here in this blending setup, okay, I had these cubic curves. Let's not look at that. If I look at my curve cuts, right here, I've done a tiny little bit more work. If you remember from our layouts, we got these three first folders where everything was sorted, but then I just had a bunch of loose points for the spans. So I've gone ahead and make a folder for all these points for the span from section 1 to section 2 right here. And I've made a folder for the span from section 2 to section 3. And I have maintained my roll cuts as individual folders. So now when I look at all my point on curve cuts, I have more structure to work with depending on what it is I want to edit. So for example, if I just want to adjust the rolling corners, I just need to look at this. And I think that's a pretty good interface for the task at hand. So I see here, well, I want to pull this one. So here I could adjust the rounding on this piece here, but say, oh no, that's not what I want to do. I want to pull this back, this one here that I pulled all the way to the top. I have two choices. I could turn on all these points here. Specifically, I could look for the span from section 2 to section 3, and then it would give me that point back. And right here, I can click it, put it back at 0.75. But I could also have done it directly from here, where I show all of them. And here I'm going to put it back, this time at 0.85. So there's a lot of different ways you can get to what you need. Sometimes you need to work directly with the structure, but you also have these view sets that give you a kind of a reverse dictionary to get to what you need. And very quickly, when I did the CAD for this part here, so I'm going to turn everything off, the blending setup, turn off the final surfaces. I looked just at this CAD object. I did not include the red surfaces because they're low quality. So when I turn on my CAD object, I prefer to see that I haven't done the finishing touch with the surface workbench filling surface. But when I look at the view sets, I like to see this surface with the red surfaces. So what I did is I simply included them here as temporary previews. So when I turn on the CAD group, I see that I don't have everything finished. When I work on my filling surfaces, after I've done the real design, I'll add the filling surfaces in here, add them into my object, and then at some point, I might remove this or simply place it outside of the CAD group. But for now, it makes sense to have it in the CAD group. So I get two flags that I still have more work to do. One is that the CAD surface doesn't have these filled in, and they show up in red when I look right here. And when we do that, we will have a pretty good starting object for this particular blending strategy. Remember that I showed you yesterday that there are other blending strategies with the same object. Specifically, we were looking at all these things, the different blend propagations we can get. So with the model I've made now, I can make all three of these, but I can't change the direction in which I have two curves. Remember that this is a 1 by 1 by 1, and my utility model right now is a 1 by 1 by 2. So I could change the dimensions of those curves and make it look like this one, but it would still have a double curve running here, not actually right here. All right, well, so that's what I'm going to do in the next video. I'm going to sort through all this stuff, and I'm going to give you the file at the end. So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But showing how it's done, I think, is an important thing that I need to show, even if I know that people are not really going to enjoy the videos. It's important for me to do it. This is not just a YouTube channel to get views. I really want to actually show what's going on inside these surfaces. Catch you next time.